Hello, welcome to Spell Day. We're covering a spell every single day of the year from the 5e PHB +3. Those +3 spells are homebrew spells. We're at +3 at the moment. You can head back to the playlist to find them. Today's spell is Water Walk.
I've been teaching the disciples all week. It's nice to actually take a break and have a little fun.
Yeah.
Cannonball!
Third level transmutation, Ritual, casting up 1 action, range of 30 feet, components verbal somatic material, a piece of cork, duration 1 hour. This spell grants the ability to move across any liquid surface, such as water, acid, mud, snow, quicksand, or lava, as if it were harmless solid ground. Creatures moving across molten lava can still take damage from the heat. Up to 10 willing creatures you can see within range gain this ability for the duration. If you target a creature submerged in a liquid, the spell carries the target to the surface of the liquid at a rate of 60 feet per round. Okay, not what I remembered. Water Walk does more than what it says on the tin. It's more Liquid Walk, but doesn't have the same ring to it. But I had thought it was just Water Walk. And it's been a while since I looked at the actual spell. Acid is on here. And even when it mentions the lava and the heat, it actually just means the heat, not the physical contact with it, just the area around it, because being next to lava is still very dangerous. So even in the acid situation, stepping on top of it, it's likely to not do anything? Maybe? But player-wise, it's more for just getting around some of these obstacles, or like a pit of acid, pit of lava. Yeah, it's still gonna hurt, but you can now run across it. There's a river in the way, a moat. Cast Water Walk. It's 10 creatures, not concentration. You can cast it in an action, or a ritual, just like water breathing before it. Third level access as well, and an additional feature, not just walking on top of it, but going up, getting out of it. And it also has a rate, which I didn't think it did. It's kind of an inverted Featherfall, just in the sense it's 60 feet per round, but instead of going down, you're going up. And I don't know the rate that the bends causes, but 10 feet a second is probably a little too fast. Also, what's the weight limit? Like if you're tied to an anchor or just something super heavy or in plate armor and then you cast Water Walk, do you go up? What if you're actually like anchored to the ground like a chain that's embedded in concrete underneath it? Or stone? Is there a weight threshold or limit? Does it count as you hanging now? Like upside down? But players-wise, it's mostly for just getting around obstacles or a flooded room or chamber, to ignore the difficult terrain part of being in said water, which comes up to the mud as well. And players-wise, if your DM likes to throw rivers at you as obstacles or creeks, or throws disadvantage that way through just shallow plains, it's a decent pick. You could just cast as a ritual ahead of time, lasts an hour when you know you're going to be heading into an encounter, especially in swamp. Because I'm big, if there's an encounter in a swamp area, it's like most of that map's going to be difficult terrain. So in the player's hands, good for getting around those obstacles. World building wise though, who needs to build bridges? People who don't have access to magic and longer term uses outside of the spell, but rhetorically. Namely for military engagements. If you have a group of spellcasters that can just cast this as a ritual, they'd only need to take a few minutes to get across, debatably, depending on the length of the river. Even then, you could do it in shifts. Just cast it on them, then they go. Next group come up. It's still only 10 at a time, but in the amount of time it would have taken to build the bridge or ballast, you can probably gain quite the amount of speed. Because again, rivers, lakes, and bodies of water, when it comes to borders in warfare, are those borders because it's difficult to get across, and something easier to enforce than just a fence. With Water Walk, that's a little harder to stop an army or assume an army's not going to be immediately walking over that. And the same thing goes for the players. While acid and lava are probably not going to, or magma in this sense, aren't going to be things that an army is going to be coming across, or other NPCs are going to be coming across. Water, bayou, swampland, mud, just mud. You don't sink into mud. Napoleon in Russian winter? Anything in Eastern Europe's mud season? That's fantastic. Yes, you still have to keep casting it over time, but the fact it's a ritual and you can just cycle through different groups of people, you can manage it if you have enough minor level spellcasters to be able to do this. Or put it on just the horses. Now the question is, the wagons probably wouldn't count, so you'd have to mount everything on just the horses specifically. But moving through swamp, any difficult terrain, I mean an enemy force, or not an enemy, but a defending force that's naturally acclimatized to a swampland isn't just like, oh yeah, we ignore that condition. It's, no, we have people ahead of time cast this on us because we know the invaders don't have that or aren't prepared for that. And we can walk around with ease. Because this question came up in one of my campaigns a few occasions, namely on the ocean and among rapids, is what do you do if it's not a perfectly flat surface? Because with Water Walk, it's kind of assumed, you know, just stepping on top of it, or it's like a smooth lake or a relatively smooth river. Water's not always like that. Maybe a pool of acid, maybe a pool of lava or magma, but what do you do with waves? The fact that it does shoot you up, I'm assuming that it's kind of like a rough medium area. As in, like, you might sink a little if anything goes on top of you, but it'll naturally either go under your boot or you'll go above it. But I have ruled if it's like large enough waves and tossing you around, it might do bludgeoning damage or knock you prone. But that's just me. That's more a question that just comes up with non-flat surfaces of liquid. This isn't even to account for anything more than difficult terrain, hence the water part of it, or being in plate armor on the ocean. If you cast this on a ship, you're fine from falling off if you're in plate armor. Yes, you'll have to catch up to the ship, but you're not going to immediately sink. Same thing goes for you for having any heavy equipment in a swamp, because you can sink in mud quite easily. Being able to cast this on a horse as well, or some other kind of mount, not bad. And even then, while the water situation is pretty nice, but a bit rare to have to like elevate yourselves up really quickly, and then the issue of the bends possibly, getting someone stuck out of quicksand or mud, that's not bad, that's a lifesaver. Especially in the quicksand case. And just like water breathing, you can cast it as an action from 30 feet away. So if there is an issue or an emergency where someone is sinking in quicksand, or is fallen off a ship in plate armor, or is about to, you can cast this as an action. Either in preparation or to actually have them float up. And non-concentration still. Pretty good. And I'd say a little more applicable than water breathing. 9 out of 10. Honestly. Namely for the environmental mud, swamp, rivers, lakes, being able to take a huge number of creatures with just a ritual over that with ease, without needing to make some kind of large investment of time, construction, or equipment. It's really good. Especially if it's for a smaller force or such. Sure, carts can't go over, but with horses and mounts, it doesn't have a weight limit, it does just need to be a creature. So as much as you can load up on that horse. Be a funny pack mule heading across that river.